Hello, everybody. Just quickly before we begin this week's episode, if you're looking for news and updates and information about events in the glamping industry, please visit AmericanGlampingAssociation.net for more information. Enjoy.
Yeah, so it was my first exposure to that, living in a little town called Jinja, Uganda, and within an hour from where we were, there were several kind of campsites, I would say, glamping sites that were, large safari kind of canvas tents, as you might think of when you think of kind of African safari experience. But in my time there, lots of friends and family would come visit, and they would always want to go on a safari for a couple of days. And I was amazed at how much of the experience that they enjoyed was just staying in the tents in the room, as much as it was getting to drive around and see the wildlife. So that was the first time that I felt like, I wonder why there aren't these type of places in the U.S. And I felt like there's a lot of really beautiful places in America that are easily accessible within 1 to 2 hour drive. And so at the, when that kind of happened, I wasn't, I'm going to leave here and go and start doing this. But it was definitely something that I kind of kept in the back of my mind as, maybe something to do down the road.
On today's episode, we get to sit down with Blake Smith, the CEO and founder of Walden Retreats, a glamping operator outside of Austin, Texas. And what I love about this week's conversation is that the journey that he took to start Walden Retreats isn't unlike many, if not most others. It's just that everyone's story isn't typically out there for the world to know and to see and to hold. He wasn't and didn't need to shout it from the rooftops, but because of this, and because of many operators like him, many new glamping operators and businesses come to us with an underlying hope that there's a guidebook out there that exists that will be perfect for them. But the reality is this. The reality is that people typically aren't born in safari tents. They don't go to glamping day camp. They're not accepted in a glamping university. And they don't move on to the glamping internship of their dreams prior to starting their glamping business. Quick side note, if that actually happened to you, please send us an email because I am going to really want to interview you. But the reality is that for a lot of people, they fall into it. And it's usually not a straight line to get there. And even once you arrive, the path is often littered with hurdles and obstacles and ups and downs, but today's conversation is a nice reminder that there's an entrepreneur in all of us. And often, all we really need is a bit of belief and a solid game plan. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody, back to the Glamping Podcast, brought to you by the American Glamping Association. Today, we are lucky enough to have Blake Smith, the CEO and founder of Walden Retreats, a glamping operator outside of Austin, Texas, who's joining us today. Blake, thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Ruben. Thanks for having me.
So let's take some time and talk a little bit about pre-Walden Retreats. So walk us through about kind of some of the jobs, the career that you had before you decided to jump into glamping.
Sure. So I spent actually the majority of my career after college working in East Africa. So I went over there on a trip for a couple of weeks to check out an organization that was getting started working with some people over there. And, I really wanted to branch out and do something different and always had dreams of kind of working in the nonprofit sector. So I kind of jumped into that actually and spent 6 years doing that. And what we actually did was I kind of helped start a social enterprise under this nonprofit organization. And we would provide job training and skills for women living in rural villages. So majority of them were widowed. They had no husbands. And so they were the primary caretaker of their kids. And what we did is we provided supplemental skills and job training around jewelry making. So we taught them how to make handmade, high-end jewelry. And we kind of developed a brand and we sold it in the States, and all proceeds from the sales would benefit the organization. provide wages for the women, and then we would reinvest additional money into support programs. So education, health and sanitation, really anything that they wanted to grow in and get better at. So I spent 6 years doing that and running it and spending time living both in Uganda and then kind of in the States running the office here. But so I kind of had a little bit different path getting into the hospitality industry, but that was kind of my first exposure to safari tents and the kind of accommodations over there that are really cool and unique, and that kind of draw people from around the world to come and visit them.
Yeah, and during that time, I imagine there's a version of that type of service is a level of a calling, but I imagine that there's also a level of it can weigh heavy, right? And so for you to be able to do that for 6 years, it must have felt like something that you almost had to do versus chose to do. Does that seem about right?
It definitely did. When I kind of started, to first get involved and decided to take the leap and move over there, I think I was at a point in my life where I really wanted to make my life count. And I think I'd been sitting on the sideline for a long time and had all these ideas or felt like I could do more than I was, but just didn't really have the courage to jump out and do it. So, it was definitely very challenging work. Living in another culture is exciting, but it is a challenge over time. You miss your friends and your family and just day-to-day things that you miss that kind of start to mount and add up. Yeah.
Was there a moment that you think about most during that time that inspired you, that you could draw a straight line to contributing to your growth as a future entrepreneur?
I really can't point out one particular moment or person, but I would say collectively, the spirit of the women that we got to work with was amazing. And to kind of see the world through their eyes, women who really struggle to meet daily needs and don't have a lot to look forward to every day, and to still find, look for opportunity and be optimistic about life was really inspiring. There are lots of different moments where that kind of took place. Just to be in that environment and to see how people in that circumstance and situation handle challenges and just get back up the next day and kind of keep on trucking was really inspiring for me, and something that I think about a lot. When you go through challenges, starting your own business, and I don't know, you have a way of relativizing your struggles and whatever is that's kind of on your plate that day. Having that perspective has been immensely valuable for me.
You also traveled a bunch and were able to live in a few different areas, and you were a ski instructor as well, right? Were you more on the side of a ski bum or more on the side of aspiring professional skier?
I would say more professional skier. I grew up skiing and moved to Aspen, Colorado, right after I graduated college in 2005, and lived there for 2 years and taught skiing, and then in the summertime would work at a fitness facility in town. But I did take it pretty seriously. I would go through all the training courses and got certified as a professional ski instructor. So that's kind of my nature. I don't do things kind of half-hearted. I always want to, strive to do my best and just kind of fulfill my potential. So I was always more of, I knew I wasn't going to be a professional long-term career ski instructor, but while I was there, I always, tried to take it seriously and do the best that I could. So yeah, that was actually where I was living at the time where I decided to go on this trip to Uganda and eventually move to Dallas, where I'm actually from, and get involved with this organization. So it was quite a transition from Aspen to Uganda for sure.
Let's fast forward a bit. And what was Uganda your first exposure to glamping and this idea of outdoor unique travel? And that's a little bit of a different take and a different twist on it. So what was your first, I guess, memorable introduction to glamping? And was that the moment that you realized that you were interested in it, or was it something that took a while for you to grasp maybe that this is something that you wanted to jump into?
Yeah, so it was my first exposure to that, living in a little town called Jinja, Uganda. And within about an hour from where we were, there were several kind of campsites, I would say, glamping sites that were, large safari kind of canvas tents, as you might think of when you think of kind of African safari experience. And it really just made sense to me. Like, we could go and drive an hour and have a really nice weekend and be outdoors. Uganda is an amazingly beautiful country. Highly recommend going if you haven't been. And it was just a joy. It just made the whole process of going and spending time outdoors really easy. And traditionally, a lot of the higher end kind of destinations over there, obviously the attraction is the wildlife. But in my time there, lots of friends and family would come visit, and they would always want to go on a safari for a couple of days. So I had the privilege of getting to kind of be their tour guide. So I got to go wherever they wanted to go and kind of tag along with them. And I was amazed at how much of the experience that they enjoyed was just staying in the tents in the room, as much as it was getting to drive around and see the wildlife. So that was the first time that I felt like, I wonder why there aren't these type of places in the US. At least I had never heard of any or been to any. And I felt like there's a lot of really beautiful places in America that are easily accessible within 1 to 2 hour drive. And so when that kind of happened, I wasn't, I'm going to leave here and go and start doing this. But it was definitely something that I kind of kept in the back of my mind as, maybe something to do down the road.
We'll be right back. And can you walk the listeners through? Do you remember the moment, or where you were or who you were with when that idea first came in? Like, I can do this. I can actually, let's get this land and let's have an operation. Was it something that was a light bulb moment? Was it something that progressed over time? Were you brainstorming with people? Can you walk the listeners through what that was like?
Sure. So the concept for Walden, really, the genesis of it started when I was in business school. So fast forward a few years, get married, move back to the States, go to get my MBA here in Austin, and had to come up with a pitch for my venture class, which is one of the last classes I took for graduation. And I went to a school here in Austin called Acton, which is a really unique kind of different MBA program. It's 1 year, really entrepreneurially focused for people who really want to start a business. And I'd actually come into the school with a couple ideas. One of them was a kind of an urban farm event venue in and around Austin. There's a place that I had been to in Mexico that was wildly popular, and people just loved to eat at a restaurant within a garden. And so that was kind of something that I thought might work here in Austin, because people are very foodies, I guess you could say, for Austin as a town. And it's just a really pretty city to kind of get out and be in the outdoors. So, but part of the business concept, as I thought through it, was I bet people might want a place to stay or rent out. And so I started remembering glamping. Obviously, I had seen it in my time over in East Africa, but didn't really give it much consideration since I had left. And so I actually just kind of right then and there pivoted the whole idea that I was going to pitch and say, I think that there's a better opportunity to just focus on the lodging component and kind of build a company around providing people with high-end, comfortable, but still authentic camping experiences. And started to dig into the industry here, what had happened the last 5 years at the time, and saw that it was kind of starting to really pick up some steam. And, right then there, I just felt like it was, somewhat of a seminal moment. It just felt like every day and every hour that I kept thinking about the idea, it was reinforced more and more that it was something that not only was a promising opportunity, but the school I went to was really, they really prioritized allowing students to find kind of their calling, their why. And they care more or as much about teaching people, who they are, what they're about, what they want to pursue in life, as they are teaching kind of the fundamentals of running a business. So this allowed me to
have different ideas during that time when you were at school. Was this one of 4 different ideas, or was this something that, maybe subconsciously you were thinking about and kind of obsessing about, and that was it? You had this laser focus, or was it more of, I've got these 4 ideas and this one seems to be the winner?
No, it was really that whole concept for kind of a restaurant wedding venue with some, unique yurts or lodging on it. And once I actually got some advice from a friend that, she said, I think that's cool, but maybe just try focusing on one of those for now. Like, we're not going to leave here and start a business, right after graduation. It was really just an assignment for a class. But she said, you're not going to have much time to dig into all of those and present something that's really well thought out. So, maybe think about, what of those 3 components, being it events, the restaurant, or the lodging component of this facility that I kind of was dreaming of, would really be of interest to me. And so that was kind of a light bulb moment, because I always grew up watching my parents host parties. We have a kind of a ranch a couple hours from Dallas where I grew up, and they would always have friends out there. And so hosting has always been something that I really enjoy and appreciate in life, and like to give people, fun experiences that they can make memories in and really cherish. And so that really seemed like a great fit for me to be in hospitality. Not only do I love the outdoors, but I love to host people. And it's real rewarding for me to know that people who stay at our property are really enjoying it, and they really cherish it, and they find a lot of value in the time that they get to spend there. So yeah, that was kind of the light bulb moment where I felt like I should really go in that direction. And I just kind of kept plugging away at it from there, and starting to kind of put the basics of a kind of a somewhat of a business plan together, and eventually pitch it to a panel of investors as kind of my final assignment for the class.
So, let's say after this class, and maybe even kind of during, who's the first people that you're talking to about this? Are you telling family? Are you telling friends? And what was the reaction that they were giving you? And I asked this question because when we had first started the idea of Glamping Hub, my business partner and I have this vivid memory of us being in Denver, and we're at a holiday party that I'm hosting at our house. And people are asking what we're up to. And we're like, oh, we're starting this new website. It's like an Airbnb, but for glamping. And I'd look around the room, and everybody that we tell, they have this look on their face like, oh, glamping. Okay. Yeah. I think Ruben has lost his mind a little bit, and that was 10 years ago. And you fast forward to today, but we had definitely come across many versions of naysayers or people who just didn't understand it, wanted to be supportive, maybe just didn't know how to be supportive, kind of got it, but didn't get it. Were you surrounded by people who understood it and supported, or were you surrounded by people who didn't understand and didn't support it, or a mixture?
Well, I was obviously excited about it personally during the time that I was kind of putting this presentation together as an assignment. But I don't think I really was like, oh, I'm going to go do this when I graduate. It still wasn't there yet, because I still had doubts that it was even viable. But then when I presented to the panel, they all had like great feedback. They were excited about it. And a lot of the other pitches that I watched were not that way. So it wasn't a feel-good crowd. You really had to kind of be on your game, and they thought what I was onto was promising. So I think at that point, I was like, all right, I think actually this could work, and I'm excited about it. And I think there's an opportunity here. So did talk with some friends about it first, people who I kind of respect as entrepreneurs. And they didn't have any direct experience in the hospitality business. But from a fundamental level, I just said, look, I want to make getting outdoors easier for people and more comfortable. And that was kind of an easy way to just present it. And that made sense to a lot of people. How I've gone about, structuring the business model and the execution of it has been different. But yeah, there were plenty of, I think, people who didn't get it or maybe still don't, family included. But I grew up in technically not the South, but Texas is southern. So I think there's an element of Southern hospitality that people don't really tell you what they're really thinking. They just kind of say, "Oh, that's nice," and they kind of move on their way. And
Right.
but regardless of that, you really have. I don't know. I've always done. You just have to have conviction, personally, and it's great to have people who are on your team and excited about it. But you're the one who has to wake up every day and kind of live with it and push it forward. So I've just tried to focus on, I don't know, my personal belief in what I'm doing.
And so fast forward, after the class, you've had it was a good course. You presented to the panel, seemed like a big hit. And now you're taking this on. So are you in fundraising mode? Did you bootstrap this, for the first phase of Walden Retreats? What did that look like for you?
So first thing I did was take like a month off. The school that I went to is extremely demanding. It's 90 to 100 hours a week. So you're sleeping maybe 4 or 5 hours a night. So first thing I did was get to know my wife again. I think we look back, I think we saw each other 8 hours a week during school. So I really just took some time off and didn't even think about it. But then about a month after that, was like, all right, well, I like this idea. I'm excited about it. This is really something that I want to pursue. My wife, we talked it over, and she was really energized about it as well, and felt like it was a great fit for me, and that people would really, kind of eat it up. So first thing I did was just start looking for properties. How are we going to have a place to kind of put up some tents, or how are we going to start? There's people ask me how we found our property. I mean, I just went online and started looking at landsoftexas.com and just started looking at properties, just see like how much does it cost and where is it, what's around the area. Just kind of started doing a bit of a search on what's a good location for this. And just kind of started from there. And then eventually, the way that I've done it, it'd be a hard thing to bootstrap. It's just real capital. It's just expensive to buy property and build rooms and all that stuff. So, I started to reach out to some folks about just trying to start kind of a friends and family fundraising round, and kind of start working on that after doing an initial search on different properties.
So, you're going through that process and you are trying to raise some capital. You seem very focused on it, and you're moving. Was there a point or multiple points during that time where you felt like you were over your head, or you couldn't do this, or was it the opposite, where because of the course and because you'd already pitched this, there was a high level of clarity? Can you kind of walk us through, the Blake of that moment? How was the mentality, and what was the Blake of that moment kind of thinking and doing?
Yeah. So I'll kind of go back to the structure of the MBA program I was in. They do it. I think they do this because they want to train entrepreneurs what it's like running a business. So there's very little feedback from teachers on like how you're doing. So assignments really aren't graded. It's more based on participation. And they leave you in the dark on a lot of stuff where they don't tell you, like, there's no right answer. It's all Socratic method as well. So the teachers aren't up there kind of dictating things. They're walking through a case study with you and kind of figuring out as the class moves along through the case. So I found that really helpful, because the reality is when you're out there fundraising or trying to get something going on your own, there's no one there to tell you like, hey, you did a great job today, or hey, you need to improve in this area. It's all kind of got to be self-motivating. And but despite that training, it was still like really just a roller coaster. Some days are good, some days are bad. Some days are you feel like you're on top of the world because you maybe closed some funding. Other days, you can't even get anyone to write you back on an email at all. So it is, as a lot of people have described it that I've listened to, it's definitely a grind and a challenge, and it's up and down, and there's really no coasting for sure. So I mean, I don't know if I've ever felt over my head. because for one, I'd been trained in school to really think through an opportunity really well before like getting into it. So I had kind of gone through an exercise and answering a lot of questions about, the why and the how and the what, all this kind of stuff of the business. So by the time I'd kind of gotten into, really working on it, I felt like I had thought it through pretty thoroughly and knew like, all right, if it doesn't work, what happens, kind of having contingency plans. But trying to get out there and meet people and talk to investors is not something that I like doing. And I wouldn't say it's anything that I'm great at, but so having to kind of push myself to kind of get over that has been, I think, initially was a real challenge, and may have been the only element I would say that I felt like over my head, so.
And, if you were to back up and maybe, have a conversation with yourself or the Blake who just started business school or who was out there in Uganda, working and or had just started college, do you think that person would have ever thought that you'd be running a glamping operation in Austin, Texas? Do you feel like this is in line with kind of who you were, 10 years ago? Is this kind of a far stretch? And I ask because, you go to this school in Austin, there's probably a million different ideas or a million different businesses that you could have worked on, right? The opportunity at that time, maybe one conversation about something else leads you to another conversation where all of a sudden you're doing something in the skiing industry, or you're doing something in a completely different field. And I always find that fascinating about the paths that people take, the conversations that they have, this cause and effect that leads them, down a very specific road. Do you feel like it was inevitable that you would be doing a version of this project, or do you feel it's really just kind of chance and some of the conversations that you had in the past just kind of, it's a coincidence that kind of led you down this path?
It's definitely a coincidence. I mean, I was never someone who was long-term focused or had much of a life plan really until I went to school for graduate school. And, a lot of the class that you take there are about personal discovery. And so I think prior to that, I'd lived my life where what was the next great opportunity, what sounded fun, what sounded exciting, but there was no like long-term plan, or there's never really an assessment as like, is this really good fit for me and who I am? So I feel immensely lucky that I chose the school that I did. And then I got to learn as much about myself as I did. And I was 34 years old when I started school there. You think by then you kind of know who you are. And maybe you do, but you change a lot in your 20s, and I changed a lot for sure living overseas and then coming back. So it's beyond though just learning about yourself, just accepting it, like just accepting that these are things that I'm good at, my traits, the things that I have interest in, that I have talent in, and then trying to go and find something that really matches up with that, because that's going to keep you. Well, it's kept me engaged in this just as much today as it was the day I started, because it's kind of a part of who I am. So I would say it's chance. It was never something that I ever thought of for sure, but probably not that far off, just because I've always been someone who likes people. I like hosting people. I like outdoors, and I like solving problems for people. I think this really eases a pain point for people who otherwise just would never go camping. They don't want to sleep on the ground. They don't have the gear. Even if they did, it's intimidating if they've never done it. So they're just not going to do it. But for people who do go camping, this is just a much easier alternative. And people really like that. And they get a lot of pleasure and joy out of the time that they get to spend out there. So.
And so for the listeners who have never had the opportunity to stay with you or haven't seen your website, can you give us a kind of a visualization of the Walden retreats of today, so that those that are listening can kind of get an understanding of the property and what it has to offer?
Yeah. So we are located about 5 miles northwest of Johnson City, Texas. birthplace of Lyndon Johnson, former U.S. president, which is about an hour or 55 miles due west of downtown Austin. We're on the banks of the Pedernales River, which eventually flows into Lake Travis, which is where Austin gets all its water. But we're in a region of Texas called the Hill Country. For a lot of people, they might not look like huge hills, but I guess in here, for Texans, it is any elevation change is kind of considered a hill. But it is scenic. It's real pretty. We have 96 acres of property and kind of private access to the river. Our rooms are kind of in the traditional African safari theme. In a sense, they're 525 square feet. But when we designed them, we really wanted to give people a really comfortable place to stay that felt luxurious and felt like a really well-designed and kind of more modern twist on a tent. But we still wanted to kind of maintain some sort of authentic camping experience. So we're a self-check-in property. So instructions are emailed to guests when they make a reservation, how to get there, how to get in, how does their tent work. I'm available for questions when anyone has them, but you bring your own food. There's a grill. There's kind of all the kind of typical or basic cooking utensils are provided in the room. So it's really an authentic camping experience that's just pre-set up for you and ready to go. So I always imagined a customer who on a Tuesday, they were at their desk and they were just kind of, I really just want to get out of the city, but they start thinking about, oh, we could go camping. And then they start thinking about, oh, well, we got to get this, we got to get that. What if it rains? What if we forget the propane for the stove? It just seemed like all these barriers for people. And so I said, I want to create a place where people can make up their mind in the middle of the week that they want to go camping. All they have to do is pack their bag and pick up some groceries, and that's it. So that's kind of exactly what we've built out there. And so far, so good. People love it. I think we've done a great job of managing expectations so that people know kind of what they get when they come out. But I think the other point of when I kind of first thought about Walden was, what's going to set it apart from other places? What's a competitive advantage? And for a business like this, it really comes down to what kind of service level are you getting with your stay? Where is it located? Is it scenic? I really felt like it's got to be a beautiful place. It can't just be 20 acres anywhere. It has to have some vistas or access to water or something like that people are really going to want to come back to more than once. We have a lot of repeat customers, so I think people really like the property and enjoy it.
You guys are going to be expanding here pretty soon. So if that's the Walden of today, what's the Walden retreat of tomorrow?
More of the same. The rooms right now, we just have 2, and that was like really our way to have a proof of concept. What is an easy way to kind of get something up and going and learn a lot from customers, and then be able to take that information and kind of develop it into a larger kind of footprint. So we're going to be expanding rooms on the property. So more of the kind of the same room types that we have now, which include full running water, clawfoot bathtub, air conditioning, obviously electricity with that, and all the other kind of cooking amenities that I mentioned. And we'll have anywhere from, I think, 12 to 14 rooms on this property. We're trying to be something that is remote and private for people. I think there's a fine line between offering this type of experience to people who really want their own kind of space and privacy. So there's kind of a fine line of navigating how many rooms do you put on the property and how close are they together. And, right now it's 2 rooms. If you put 50 rooms on the property, does that kind of ruin the experience for people when there's so many other guests around? So we would kind of want to be operating the boutique niche of the industry and have smaller footprint properties, but you're going to get a lot for that money, for the higher price point. But Yeah, so that's our plan for this one property here in Austin. But the original vision for the company was really to be able to, study and build a business at this first property, and then take it and find other markets. The kind of core concept of the business is, give people unique, beautiful, comfortable places to stay and go camping 1 to 2 hours from major cities. So really offering places outside of a city where people can, just get in their car and drive to. So other markets around the Southeast, maybe on the West Coast, there's a lot to kind of figure out there, but that's kind of been the long-term goal, is to, not only to be here in Austin, but in other markets as well.
Awesome. Well, Blake, we're out of time. Thank you so much. A pleasure as always. Thanks for making the time. Again, Blake Smith, CEO and founder of Walden Retreats. Make sure you check out waldenretreats.com for more information. And Blake, enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend, and looking forward to connecting soon.
All right, Ruben. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.